Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Takeup. Today we have episode 45, Holiday Survival Guide, Quick Gifts, and Faux Knits. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Takeup. It is Friday, 2:30 p.m. in the Mountain Time Zone, and as you can see, unfortunately, I am not in the lovely and brilliant studios. I am in my home office after some technical difficulties today, and frankly, I've been a little under the weather, so we had kind of a rough day, but that is pretty common for everybody in this last little while as we get ready for the holidays. I'm happy to see you all here, and I apologize for once again being in my home office. We will try and get that quality back up and be back in the lovely and brilliant studios as soon as we possibly can, but we do have some interesting stuff to talk about today. I'm going to try and keep it a fairly short show, and we'll see how we can get that done, because honestly, we have plenty to get done around now, and I really should have done the seasonal survival guide episode a little sooner. Unfortunately, due to some technical issues, some of my samples that I wanted to show today are not going to be able to be showed, but I will still go through all the stuff I talked about, and we do still have a freebie file, a vector file for folks talking about the ugly sweater graphics that I see everybody doing, I've been doing for years. So there should be some fun stuff to discuss. In any case, let's go ahead and start in with some comments, some people who are joining us, and get into the show. And let's go ahead and start out with Cindy King out in Texas. Cindy King, good afternoon, Cindy. Glad to see you here. Happy to have you on the show. And everybody else apparently also happy to have you on the show. Hello, Cindy. Jeff says, hello, looking forward to the discussion. Absolutely happy to have you on here. I know that you, Jeff Fuller of Embroidered and of his own Fuller Embroidery Works, as you can see there in the icon, doing a lot of work yourself, I'm sure, and doing a lot of the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. There's a discussion about what kind of items are great for last minute gifting, and you're definitely on that list. Cindy King already answering. Everybody's talking. I love that everybody's talking in the comments. Just to hear, hi, Eric and all. Hello, sir. Happy to have you in. Frank Dunn from over in the UK. Happy to have you in as well. Good evening for everybody on that side of the pond. Matt is in. Yo, Matt. What's up with you? Honeybee Creation says, good afternoon. Justin saying Nerd 3 checking in, but technically Jerry Lee was third in the M Nerd group. So correction, number 4. We're numbered. Apparently we're numbered now. And hello. And once again, please do remind us of your real name, Kingsbury Crest, because I always forget and end up using your name from your icon there. And yes, Marta Capray, absolutely. I am battling the gremlins. Thank you for showing up. Despite the fact that I'm battling the gremlins, I know that this may be a light show also in viewership today because everybody's so busy, but hopefully it's some good stuff. Hopefully for everybody here. I'm certainly hoping that we have some issues for folks to deal with here that I can shed some light on. And if nothing else, you'll remember for next year some of the things that I say today, because really this should have been the November 4th show. But we're going to talk a little bit about the way holidays get handled and some things I've done over the years, and do a little bit of talk about, like I said, the brief covering of some technical stuff of the vectors, like I said, doing a little holiday sweater stuff that I've done for people in print and in promotions, and then a little bit about the faux knit treatment that I've done manually before for digitizing. Talk a little bit about that, but really a lot of this today is going to be going over some business stuff, talking about what we should do at the holidays and good ways to handle things. John Dine is saying, hello, hi, Eric. This may become a new Christmas staple for us embroiderers. Yeah, I think that there's some stuff to be said there. And hopefully if you're not doing multimedia, if you're not doing print yet, you maybe think about doing some print. I think that adding print, especially I like desktop sublimation. Sublimation, if you've got a heat press already, great thing to add to your embroidery. I think that having a sublimation press, especially a small sublimation, like a heat press sublimation printing, very useful stuff and helpful to have going on there for sure. I love it, Regina. Happy to see you here. I hope you're having a good time. Glad to have you in on the show as well. You guys may have heard about some of my history of Regina last week when I talked about my history and my kind of time coming into what I've been doing lately. And as I see, the M Nerd crew is still fighting over their numbers, but hey. Whichever number you are, I'm glad you're here, folks. Mike says, I am here too. Mike Muldowney, happy to have you here. Reciprocator number 1. If you don't know, reciprocators, all of you guys who give and share alike, and you're also named after a part of the machine, like the Takeup lever is where we get Takeup from. Happy to have you in, and he is namer of the reciprocators number 1. Matt, absolutely correct. There are always corporate holiday parties into February. This is very true. Now, you might not want to make holiday themed stuff into the corporate parties, but some of the things I'm talking about might be useful for you, especially when we're talking about selecting gifts. And we'll have to see. Finding a new font that you like. Cindy King talking about a font in the shop that she loves, so everything's getting names on them today, and it's all in the same font. I have that very much too. One of my favorites is Flare Serif. If you don't know what it is, the true type font is Albertus. It does very well as a small font. So if you didn't know that, nice Roman serif font with a wedge serif, lovely stuff. So in any case, aside from all the other discussion we got going on today, let's go ahead and start talking about gifts and holiday seasonal survival. We'll talk a little about gifts and stuff like that. We'll talk about things that you can do to prepare yourself and finish off with some fun stuff about making knit patterns and things like that. But first, I'm actually going to go ahead and give you guys a chance at the meme of the day. We're going to end with the moment of meme. I like this idea, but we're going to go ahead and give you the one meme for the day because I'm going to try and keep it down to adult roar, not do 50 memes before we start. But here's a meme of my own creation, guys. So get ready. It is meme time. Auto digitize your designs or draw 25. Well, yeah, it's pretty obvious what I would do. All right. Yeah, I know. There's a place for auto digitizing, guys. There's a place for automatic tools, but I like to be in control, folks. So there we go. Meme of the day. I'd definitely be drawing 25. So let's go ahead and get started with the actual meat of the show today. Like I said, might be a fairly short show as we get into the holidays. I know you guys are busy, and I'm busy too. I've been very busy making some things that I probably can't share everything with y'all. Past little lace ornamenty things in front of the camera. There's some stuff that has to happen. So, I can't show you everything I'm working on, but, really fast. Little pieces of lace. Okay. Maybe I made some stuff. Maybe I made some holiday stuff. I don't always do that stuff, but, depending on your market, folks, it might make sense. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead and get into the actual meat of the matter today. And the first thing I'm going to say is, this is our seasonal survival guide. Well, first thing, I'm going to go ahead and give you a link to an article. This is an older article that I've done some time ago, but I think it is useful here. And if you guys are actually in the comments, I'll go ahead and post the full link into the comments. But this is the easy way to get to it, bit.ly/EC Seasons. And I think that is something that you guys may enjoy. This is the original article some years ago that I did based on this stuff that really is meant, this is more of a November prep article, but some of the stuff in this article I thought was useful. And especially because I keep getting questions. I think this year is classic for people not really being on top of what they needed to get done for the holidays. And I'm one of those people too. I have to admit, when I look down and see that it is the 4th of December, it is shocking to me. But there's some stuff that people still haven't done that I think is useful to do. And if you haven't done these steps, getting yourself ready for the final part of the season and for the end of gift giving season, then you really should do those. And number one thing that I think everybody needs to do if you haven't done it yet is this: state your cutoff date. If you're making stuff for anyone, now this is aimed toward businesses. You guys know I'm a commercial guy. I have been a commercial guy for my entire career. But even if you're making stuff for people and you have been taking requests, be clear about when you no longer have time to handle this stuff. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my other screen so I can show you some of the examples of stuff that I'm talking about here from this article. And this is the guide, Your Guide to Seasonal Survival. And it's something that I've renovated many times. I actually need to write a new one here shortly, but for now, I think there's some good stuff in here, but the first thing in it definitely is stating your cutoff date. And what I mean by cutoff date is the date after which you can no longer take in any new orders or any new requests. A lot of people are scared to do this, especially because right now with business being light, being difficult for some folks, it feels like you want to take everything, but nothing will make a customer or truthfully a family member dislike you more than promising something that you can't deliver and bailing out. And the other thing you're going to find is on a personal level, you're not going to enjoy your holiday if you feel like you have something hanging over your head that you didn't get done, or if someone is bitter because you promised them something and then they see you very rightfully relaxing and having time with your family and they get upset. It's not something that they should do, but it is something that people do. So state your cutoff date. And I'm with Carolyn right here. And Carolyn, you're going to come up again later because I'm going to show some of your work. Hopefully that's all right. Some work that we did kind of together since I've given you some weird designs over the years. But Carolyn says today, and I'm like, yeah, if it's not today, I'd be surprised for a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people saying the 12th, the 11th. I've seen that very frequently. People say 12th, 11th, 15th. Remember that shipping is delayed more than it has been ever. And we're seeing things like UPS restricting certain retail stores for how much stuff they can drop in a day. We're seeing more people at home, more people using shipping than ever before. Don't wait. state your cutoff dates whenever you know where they are. And the cool thing is you can always be generous. If somebody says, are you sure? And you really can't fit them in, that's fine. And in fact, the great thing about that is you can do the thing that I always tell you guys to do with the discounts. Show the value and write it off. Same thing here. Tell them the cutoff date and then give them that value and say, you know what? I'm going to fit you in. It's going to be hard for me, but there we are. I fit you in. And then I hate to say it, but you do. You get the credit, especially with customers. You get the credit for being the person who came in and saved the day. And you deserve that credit because this is a difficult time right now to get things done. So state your cutoff date as soon as you can and repeat it and make it clear. And if you've got a website or a social media presence, you absolutely need to show that on your social media presence, on your and anywhere you are. And honestly, the other thing is, if we were doing this ahead of time, if I had been more prepared and actually decided to do this in November, like I probably should have, I would tell you the best thing to do is to state early when it's coming, to repeat it frequently, and to plan ahead for this stuff. And I would have honestly said that you run a campaign ahead of time. And one of the things that I have done, and like I said, this is something that might be for next year, not this year. One of the things that I've done that's really been useful is to come up with a small curated set of potential gift ideas, things that are lucrative for you that you want to do, and send out an idea book to your top customers ahead of time so that they have a concept. And frequently, this is where I think some discounts can be useful. You guys know that I don't talk a lot about doing tons of discounts. I think that providing value is great, but I don't like to do tons of, certainly not looking for bottom of the barrel scraping, not looking to try and dig our prices into the dirt. However, discounts for placing orders early, there's sometimes reasons for this stuff. The same way that discounts make sense for volume when you have kind of scales of efficiency where you're not changing threads, where you're not changing stuff, the garments are the same, the design is the same, and you really can crank more efficiently without having to stop and mess with paperwork and information and rethreading machines. That can make sense why you're discounting on volume. Some stuff doesn't, like sublimation printing takes the time it does. The heat press takes the time it does. There's not as much room for efficiency in sublimation printing, in my opinion, than there is in like embroidery. Embroidery really does have some setup stuff that can eat into your efficiencies. But when we're talking about doing that initial planning stages, like I said, this is something for any event period. Right now, might be not as useful. Come up with a curated selection of things that are easy for you to produce, that you think are valuable, and send those out ahead of time. You're going to be the person who is the idea person. You're going to be the problem solver, and you're going to remind people early what they need to do. Give them a cutoff date for an initial early order period that you give them a deal on, and then give them the real cutoff date after which you will not get any more stuff done. So these are things that are useful. Like I said, here, December 4th, what you need to be doing is just stating your actual cutoff date after which you will not be able to get anything else done. And like I said, if you guys are not in the commercial world, certainly I still think that this is something to be said for people who are coming to you with that last stocking they want embroidered for the friend, for the person in the family that they think they're going to ship back and forth to you in these days where we don't have the freedom to kind of walk back and forth to each other's houses necessarily. This is something that we need to realize is coming up. Know your ship times, know your cutoff dates, and plan accordingly, and be really clear with people up front. I think that's something useful. And Matthew says, I have 600 patches I need to make and send out so they get to them by the 24th. And of course, the materials are in a UPS truck somewhere. Man, I am feeling that right now. Shipping is really something sticky. And if you are, as I am, in an e-commerce channel that is somewhat out of your control, you find that there's a lot of hurt feelings. And if you're using, say, a distribution center or a shipper, it may be on the shipper's dime, and there's really nothing you can do. That's why that these cutoff dates are so important. It's why being very clear about potential possibilities of delay are really important. And I would say this. We talk about how meaningful embroidery can be. Well, it's also very meaningful that gifts get to people on time. It means something to someone, even if we sometimes forget. As providers of a service, we do remember as people who are giving gifts to our family what that means to us. Being reliable in this case is more important than saying yes and being agreeable. And I'm not going to say I don't have that problem too. I'm one of the kinds of people who wants to jump in and always help everybody. And I have had to learn in times like this that you often can't do everything you said you were going to do if you are not planning your time accordingly. Hence why I hit that one pretty hard. So that's what I always tell people. And by the way, I'm going to show you more of this stuff. This is Carolyn's work that I was talking about. Lovely little ornaments, which we're going to talk about when we talk about redirecting. But yeah, that's one of those things I want to tell people, as we go through, you'll see this article. If you go click through on that EC Seasons, I'll go ahead and put that link back up again. We do talk about the the setting of that date. And there's actually a full printwear article as well that goes with that has more detail and it goes into some other stuff that we're actually going to talk about very briefly about the kinds of decoration we do at the holiday season, which I will talk about a little bit too, a little bit about working on textured substrates, a little bit about metallic threads, and we'll go over that very briefly. But suffice it to say, first thing, set your cutoff date. Make sure that you have everybody very aware of the reality of what gets done and what time you have. We all know, if we don't know, we should know how much capacity we have on our machines, how much we can actually run them in a day, how many hours we can legitimately run, and what we currently have on our plates. If we don't know this stuff, then this is a good time to think about how you're accounting for your production and do some time studies if it really comes down to it. Do some time studies so you know what you really are capable of so that when it comes down to this stuff, you can look at the books and tell people really what you think. So that's one of those things too. And Honeybee Creation says, yeah, I have a package that is supposedly hasn't been picked up by the mailbox for the past week. Oh, that is so rough. Oh, and Dot Tone Dan says, yeah, I'm live in the production department. Say hello to IDP. Hello, everybody in the production department. Thank you for listening in. Hopefully I have something good to tell you guys. Today, a lot of it's going to be sales and marketing, but we're also going to get a little bit into embroidery itself and working with, like I said, knit substrates and metallic threads, stuff like that. And at the end, the fun stuff about faux knit treatments as well. So anyway, guys, let's get back to it. Jeff says, I'm afraid to check my email. Last time I did, I missed the lacy things. Oh yeah, I did. I talked about lace objects that I'm making right now, and I showed a couple of them. Here, I'll wave one past the screen one more time. Lace objects. Okay. I can't show you guys everything. I'm developing stuff. I have a program too. We're developing things. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next step on this thing. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, guys, is be ready to redirect. And what do I mean by be ready to redirect? People are going to come in and want detailed, intense stuff. And here's the thing. We may have our cutoff date still open, but if everybody who walks into our shop wants a full-size jacket back, digitized custom from a photograph, and it has to be done by this cutoff date, those things may not work. The good thing is we have a lot of options when it comes to redirecting them to other solutions. So instead of saying no, what we need to say is, what about this? Provide an option. Don't just close the door. Open the window before you close the door. Say, yeah, I know we don't have a door. I can't open the door to the shop to give you everything you want. That's not going to happen. That's the reality of what's going on. And I don't want to promise you something I can't. Here are some things I can promise you. And the thing is, now that we're dealing with shipping issues, now that we're dealing with the issue of also getting that kind of decoration done, or let's say we have capacity issues in our shop, we don't have enough time on the embroidery machines to make things happen, we are going to have to look for other kinds of things to deal with. And it could be stock issues, it could be capacity issues, it could be the decoration is too intense. Whatever it is, we need to be ready to redirect and provide solutions that are amenable to us, that we can make money on, and that get the customer happy. Because what we have to remember is, frequently the customer, and this is not always the case, but sometimes the customer is going to come to us and they have a desired end result. But the end result really isn't the embroidered object. It is, I bring these gifts to my clients or my shop or my family, and they see them and they like me because I got them something cool. That's the actual thing we're selling them. We're selling them the result. We're selling them that availability. They are going to come to us with an idea in mind, and people who are very set on their idea may think that the only way for that to happen is to have a denim jacket with a gigantic embroidered patch on the back, and we don't have time for that. Well, that's something we can't offer. What we can do is say, how about we have something that's a printed thing that is multimedia? I can sew a patch on that's printed with some embroidered accents. I can create, or like that. Let's say they come in and say they need this particular jacket. We can't get the jacket in-house on time. We can produce a patch with their design. So these are the kind of things we need to think about. What are the ways we can redirect that, save our production time, that enable us to fulfill the actual customer's wish, which usually is make me look like the hero, make me look like the person who went out into the world and brought the cool thing back to everyone, have my people happy with what I provide. Doing that, and especially we're talking about business, much of this may be help me market myself through promotional products. Marketing yourself through promotional products doesn't require that we do exactly what they ask us to, doesn't necessarily require that we have a pillowcase-sized embroidery as part of that. So one of the things we want to do is be ready to redirect. And the way I like to kind of state that, what kind of things do we do to redirect? Certainly, I'm just going to show you this stuff. Now, this is not for everybody, but this might be for some, depending on what kind of shop you have. And this is something Carolyn Cable made and Stricken Knits, and she made these embroidered ornaments. And these are felties, essentially. These are a felt, a 2-layer felt embroidered design piece that she did. And I'm actually going to go ahead and see if I can show you. This is what it looks like on the tree. These were designs that I digitized in the series, the Acanthus series of designs I did that kind of look like Acanthus work, like manuscript work. And also looks a bit like ornamentation forever, because Acanthus leaf ornamentation is timeless. We don't have to get into that. I will at some point probably talk about that stuff some more, but I've done quite a lot of it. But as you can see, the way these are done on felt, cut out after the fact. Felt doesn't ravel, and you can run a ton of them in a hoop, and felt runs like iron. It doesn't move, doesn't shift a lot. Awesome stuff. Easy to stitch together, drop an ornament hook on that thing, and it's an awesome promotional product. You can throw a logo on the back of it, and it's very homey, very crafty, very warm, very cool. And the thing is, you can do, if you don't want to do this, you don't want to produce anything, all digitizing software is going to have a mesh lace background, kind of like the stuff that I can't really show you here. It's going to have a mesh background that is for freestanding lace. If you're a commercial embroiderer, you may never have thought about this, but if you make an ornament shape with that freestanding lace background that is usually a single click option, throw a little loop on it and drop a logo on top of it, that lace mesh will hold up to a lot if your underlay is good. Throw that together and stitch some of those out, and they can be promotional products. They can be gifts. Now, if you have capacity issues with the embroidery machine, that's not going to work, certainly. But things like these, they have a couple of helping kind of techniques, or they have a couple of things about them, little qualities about them that help. Number one, technique that is easier to produce than some things. The second thing, they're non-sized. So easy to decorate. We want stuff that's easy to decorate. We don't want to add too much time. Embroidery may not be the option, so we're going to talk about that again in a second. But non-sized items are fantastic, because as gifts, that means that they can be fill-in gifts. They don't have to be for one particular person. Apparel is difficult, especially as we get down to the end of the season, because if we don't get the right size, suddenly the apparel is useless. Things like this, ornaments, patches, and when we get into printing, printed hard goods, tumblers, coasters, these things can be useful, can be delightful, because the image themselves makes them valuable, and they are non-sized, and many of them can be easy to decorate. So think about that when we're talking about fill-in objects. And the other thing I'm going to say, we'll talk about more of this stuff. I have too much stuff on here. Like I said, I had a little technical difficulties. You guys know that every once in a while you end up with a crash at the wrong time. Well, I had a crash at the wrong time, so I don't have everything I would like to show you here. Let me see if I've got any other stuff to show you. I think there's one other. Here's my other big thing. There we are. Sublimated patches. Sublimated patches, if you can't make anything else, are fantastic for this. And I've done this many times when I was running out of time for stuff customers wanted. Great for decoration as well as for gifts. As a non-sized item, it's awesome. You can absolutely set these up for gifts themselves and as a decoration object. Let's say that we do have in-stock garments, but we can't get a highly detailed thing digitized for somebody in that period of time, or they want to embroider something crazy, they want to do something that we can't get done. Patch blanks. Hopefully you have some in stock. I always thought it was great to have black edged, because black is a really good universal. Plus you can sublimate over the top of it. You don't see the other colors. The black obliterates it. So you can full bleed sublimate on top of these suckers. You go ahead and get yourself those polyester patch blanks in 3 inches round black edge, and you can put whatever you want on them. You keep a load of these things in your shop. And if you have a desktop sublimation printer or larger printer and a heat press, you can crank out a tremendous amount of these. They have texture on the edge, and you can heat seal or stitch these on quite quickly, especially on flat goods. And let me tell you, they look really nice on a jacket. And I've used them from everything from this, which is like a lawnmower and chainsaw service center, to the people at Balloon Fiesta, kind of our largest tourist industry thing that happens every year here in Albuquerque. And I've done officials all the way through sponsors where last minute they had to have these things done. Match their embroidered stuff. The other thing you can do is use embroidery graphics. We've talked about doing high resolution graphics out of your embroidery software, like in Brilliance. You can actually set these incredibly high resolution, transparent PNG graphics that are using the 3D preview of the embroidery. And you can still use the faux embroidered graphic sublimation printed on these patches and throw it on stuff. Is it the same quality level as embroidery? No, I don't think it is for me. I love the texture embroidery, obviously. However, this allows you to do non-sized items that are in-stock items, in-house, produced in-house very quickly, and have a lot of bang for your buck. You get a lot of decoration out of it. So, like I said, same day full embroidered patch. How about instead same day embroidered edge, marrowed edge, patch with sublimation on it, and I think it's a great idea. So I really do love that stuff. So anyway, that's what I think here. By the way, Jeff says, shipping, we're paying for 3-day delivery. It's actually taking 2 weeks. Having stuff in-house and having these options is important. I know that we're a little late for some of this stuff, but you may still be able to get patch blanks on hand. And guys, if you have polyester twill and you've got thread and you have any sort of backer, whether it's a water-soluble, the plastic method, or anything, go back to my 2 videos on patches to find out more about how to do that. You can make patches quite quickly, and you can print them quite quickly for this as well if you're doing sublimation. Even if you're not doing multimedia, patches are a really great option for a non-sized item that is quick to create and that you can hand over. And the other thing you can do, you can hand it over to someone and say, hey, what I can make for you are patches. You can throw them on any garment that you purchase yourself. If you don't want to handle embroidering customer supplied garments from any random retailer that you might ruin, the other thing you can offer them is patches, and they can grab a jacket from wherever, sew it on themselves, or have you press it if you want to get into that. The customer supplied thing is a question everybody has to answer for themselves, but using patches is one of the ways you can handle that stuff. Cindy says, beautiful. Yeah, Carolyn made some awesome ornaments, and honestly, I really do love the pieces she made. She always makes such great stuff. I have the other stuff that I'll show you here. These are some mittens she made that I really love. The thing that's interesting about this one, these are like cut and sew that she did. That stuff is out of the ballpark right now. What I will say, though, is designs like this is a faux split stitch, a faux chain stitch that I did. I got it on my theonlystitch.com website. These things are very few stitches for a whole lot of graphical, impact, a whole lot of value, if you want to call it that, because they look very interesting and the texture is interesting. So a piece like this stitches very quickly, but looks expensive, looks nice, looks impressive. So that's one of those things to think about too. When we're talking about easy decoration, remember I'm saying you're trying to redirect people. Well, easy to decorate, one of the things to do is low stitch count items. Tone on tone stuff where you can run lower densities or single colors so you don't have to be changing colors. Very quick stuff. So the kind of things we're looking for, like I said, cut and sew mittens, not happening. Patches in-house, absolutely possible. Creating some ornaments for your top customers or making them as gifts, totally possible, depending on your capacity and what you have on hand right now. And that's the thing I'd like to kind of bring up about that is essentially you're looking for, when you're trying to redirect, you're looking for things that are easy to fulfill and that won't have a lot of problems. So non-size items are great. Like I said, patches, ornaments, cups, mugs, if you're doing sublimation, are really fantastic. Tumblers, that kind of stuff is great because anybody finds it useful and it doesn't have to be sized. Something that's easy to decorate. I do like heat press stuff because heat press stuff is just faster. Honestly, we can cover a lot more ground faster. Are we losing the texture? Yeah, maybe we are, but if we have the materials in-house, that's a big thing. So the other thing is in stock or made in-house. If you guys saw my earlier piece where I talked about saving embroidery disasters, if you have dead stock, this is a great time to haul that out. If somebody says, I have to have something right now, you say, here is my catalog of dead stock. You should know what dead stock you have. These are the sizes and objects that I currently have on hand. If you want one of these, you can have that. If you don't want one of these and I have to have something shipped in, I can't promise you the date. And that is one of the things that sometimes happen. But in stock or made in house, what I mean with this is too, stuff that you can make easily. Another great thing about patches, though, if you have machine capacity time is not great. You can make patches with substrates with thread alone, and they're made very much like freestanding lace, but they're fully covered, which means that you can make patches of any color and description pretty much out of thread and the thread alone, and you can make them quite quickly. I will say, however, I prefer to do these things with fabric. I'm very much a twill patch guy, but you can absolutely do that. And you can do things like using light coverages to emulate full embroidery, or you can cover background materials entirely with embroidery to get color if you want to. The thing is, you really, because you're trying to get things that are easy to decorate, you want to reduce that stitch count if you can. But when you are stuck, you do not have an item, you can absolutely do things that are easy to make in-house. And like I said, felt that can be gotten easily, or if you have that on hand, polyester twill, especially if you've got sublimation rigs out there, pre-made patch blanks if you have those on hand. And honestly, those are the on-hand things. Definitely looking for your production schedule. You have to think about that, but things that you can make out of thread immediately. So lace ornaments, those are fun. And I know a lot of people are going to say, really, you worked at a big commercial shop. Did you ever do this stuff? Yeah, we did. Not all the time. I'm going to admit that this is much more, I think, for smaller runners, people who are doing gifts. Then it makes absolute sense. Big commercial shops may not do as much of this, but I think you should think out of the box because running a piece of freestanding lace is no harder than anything else you might do. And honestly, everybody says to me, oh, what about the washing process or what have you? It is pretty easy to soak, rinse, and allow these things to dry press them real quick before you run them out the door. I don't think that they're that difficult to do. And yes, there's a little more labor involved, but if you're really saving someone, remember that you're providing them a lot of value. You can command higher prices than if you were trying to do these things in mass production. You're doing these to save someone who is hurting for a gift at the last minute. Remember that when you price it out. So these are things to think about, guys. I think that is fairly important. By the way, Carolyn says, Odin. And I say, I don't know. Still has both eyes. If you know Norse god Odin, one eye is blind. I might have notated that if I was trying to make Odin with my Viking head there. My Viking head design. But yes, I like your enthusiasm. All right, folks. The next thing to think about, defer production. And what do I mean by that? Deferring production. Well, this is a really great time to use gift certificates. And I think especially people who are doing local production don't always think about gift certificates. If you aren't doing gift certificates, I think you absolutely should. And most of us have a little bit of art skill, definitely enough to grab a template and do some stuff. And actually, I will go ahead and show you guys something that I've done if I can bring it up. Hopefully, I actually have this up. I think I do. Yes, I do. All right, so I've made some mock-ups to just show you something I made. And these are some gift certificate blanks that I made actually as potential testers for Embrilliance. So it's not something that's available right now for all you people who do know what Embrilliance is. What I will say is that following some tutorials, now I do some vector art, so it's not like I don't know what I'm doing with vector art entirely. So it's not like if you're not somebody who does any art whatsoever, you've never touched art software, you might want to get a template and do this. However, it's not that difficult to make some fairly interesting, good-looking certificates. And the great thing about these is that if you send these off to people and they have a printer in-house, they can print their own gift certificates and have something to throw in a card that is a physical object to mail to someone. And you can set these things up so that they make sense for your production. So one of the great things you can do is when you don't have production schedules, say defer production. Send these out. The people won't get them until the holiday. And what that means also is you now have production coming in after the holiday. Now, if you're trying to get ganged up orders so you're not doing onesie twosie stuff, the great thing you can do is actually set this up as a program with a company ahead of time and have the company do these as the handouts. Say, you are going to get garments. The order date will be by this. When all the orders are in, you'll turn in your certificate or you will give them the code number that's on it, and they will provide you with this much product. If you're already doing websites, it's incredibly easy to do. If you're not doing a website, you can still do this completely physically by just telling them what the qualifications are, what the cutoff dates are, and showing them the kind of product that's available. So defer production by offering gift certificates, codes, or the ability to buy later. So not only are we getting them to purchase from us now, we're getting the money now, we are also deferring that production ahead of time. Or we can even discuss this with the company and say, when we get to the end of the order period, you can pay then. We will turn in the amount of vouchers you have, and this is what they're going to cost, and this is what you'll have to pay for us. And we will settle the order out now. Give your people the gift certificate now. We will actually fulfill the gift program in January. So deferring production is another thing. I don't think everybody thinks about it ahead of time. It doesn't take that long to do some guilloche yourself. That's the weird engraving patterns you're seeing back there. The guilloche patterns are something you can also, trust me, I'm sure right now, without looking, you can go buy a million templates that are cheap from any number of vector sources or find your own template for gift certificates and use that. Personally, I made some of my own because I got interested in making guilloche patterns in Illustrator. And so I taught myself how to do that out of some tutorials. So that's what I do. Because I can't spend my time in a great way, I have to start doing something I'm curious about. Sometimes I run off to do these things. So this is something I learned quite some time ago, and I've made several patterns. And honestly, I've used this elements of this template to make several gift certificates over the years. So this is something I think, defer production. It's another way to handle that stuff, and it really works. So in general, let's go back to our seasonal survival guide one more time. And like I said, if you guys want to check it out, that article also has the full printwear. Back in the day, Printwear magazine had this full spread on it, and it has a little bit more about that. And like I said, we're going to talk a little about the other things that it talks about, which are some production concerns that are going on, and you get to see more of Carolyn Cagle's awesome work. These really great, the peacock feather design that I have on my website, she made some really cool mittens out of that too, and an awesome hat. So there's some really great fleece work she did that I love as holiday items. However, you'll get to see some really cool stuff in there, and you'll get more tips about this stuff. So in essence, let's kind of cover this one more time and say, these are the things I think you should be thinking about as far as getting this stuff together for yourself. Number one, if you haven't stated your cutoff date, or if you haven't said it for a while, go out there today one more time. And honestly, every couple of days, definitely once a week in the next 2 weeks, State your cutoff date again. Yes, I know it sounds like you're a broken record, but if you're still taking orders of any kind, you need to make clear when you can actually get them out and what use that you have for people's orders at a certain period of time, or what utility you can offer them. And like I said, being clear about this means you are reliable, if not agreeable. It sucks because we all want to agree to everything and say yes to everything. Be careful with your yes, because saying yes and then no is a lot worse than saying no and then yes. Reserve your right to make exceptions, but definitely put out a guideline there and say, hey, if you want to, if you're very worried about setting this cutoff date, if it bothers you to be, kind of draconian and say this is the way, stop and say, okay, this is my cutoff date. If you have a special request, ask me, but the likelihood is after this date, there will be no more new orders. Say it now, say it loud, put it everywhere. And honestly, putting a little scarcity behind it for the people who haven't gotten ready will also help them. When they feel like there's some urgency, it may also drive a little bit of sales. Next thing is, of course, be ready to redirect. So remember, you want to get stuff that is easy for you to decorate. You want to have non-sized items. You want to have stuff that's in-house or something that you can make that's in stock. Or you want to see if you can defer production. But what all we're doing in general is being ready to redirect. When someone comes to us with a request we can't fulfill, the best thing we can do is come up with another request that we can fulfill and present that, rather than just saying, are you crazy? It's really easy for us right now to go, can you imagine that I have time to do all that? Or I can't believe you'd wait till this period of time. Try and remember the times that you've been late and say instead, here's what I can do. I know it's not what you may have come in here for, but I think we have an answer for you. And like I said, if you can do this stuff earlier, have curated selections ahead of time that you know, that's great. If not, think about it today. What would you do if someone came in tomorrow and needed a couple pieces? What would be your best option for someone who doesn't know what they're doing? Because everyone is stressed. Everyone feels like they don't know what they're going to get done, and everyone's looking for an answer. If you're the answer person, remember, you don't just want to be a box that shirts go in, shirts and money come in blanks and out comes product. You don't want that. You don't want to be the blank t-shirt box. You don't want to be the monolith that produces garments. You want to be an answer person. You want to be a consultant for them. They come in, you come up with solutions. That makes you a lot more valuable than someone who happens to have the equipment, which is what a lot of people think of us. So be ready to redirect and handle that stuff as well. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump in a couple of comments. Let's see what's going on here. Joining late, Lisa Shaw, like myself, running samples. You are in freestanding mode. Yeah, talked a lot about lace lately because I've been thinking about lace lately. But honestly, this is something I've talked about before. As you can see, the article's been out for quite some time, and ornaments and stuff, I really think they get underutilized. And it was kind of a cool thing because we had Jeff saying earlier, I'm throwing a corporate logo on a lace shape at the moment to take to one of my customers. I really think it gets underutilized and something we can do. If you're going to learn something, commercial embroiderers from the home embroidery scene is that they learn to make their machines do more, and creating objects is one of those things that you can do. These machines do quite a lot, and it's not always that labor intensive. Some of it can be quite labor intensive and don't make a lot of sense for commercial folks, but there's a lot that you can do with that machine to create objects that make sense for production and for sales. I really think that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Carolyn says, a lot of times I will make a printout of the gift they're having me make, and then it's put into a nice envelope under the tree. Absolutely a particularly great option, man. You absolutely have to do that. So everybody does need to remember that there are other ways to handle this if the production can't get done, if there's a potential, or that there's a potential shipping problem. Now that we're dealing with potential shipping problems, and I love that Carolyn said this is a really great option, say, hey, let me send you a certificate. Let me send you a preview of the actual item. Hold on to it and make sure it's set for a common size for gift cards, or for, at the very least, a common size for some sort of greeting card, and just say, hey, guys, this is what we're looking at. This is what you're going to send. If you don't have any other option, let them know that this is what's on its way, and at least you can give them something. At least you can have something to hand them or send them if the shipping doesn't turn out. So that's something that people have done before. I've certainly helped. And like I said, the gift certificate is another way to handle it. The gift certificate is more of a way to time shift that production out into January so that people still get something and feel like they've been thought of, but you still have a chance to provide that production. And honestly, one of the greatest things you can do when you do these redirects is to let people know that we can spin this thing. And I know it sounds terribly like, really, we're going to spin this, that we're going to lie to people. We're not lying to people, but the truth of the matter is we talk about the positives with this option. You say, hey, we're giving you this gift certificate because we have a small selection of garments they're going to provide, which, by the way, curate your garments. Make sure you get that settled out ahead of time. Don't just slap a catalog in front of people. But we'll tell people, hey, we have a selection of things that we're letting you pick from, and we want you to be able to pick what you really want. Instead of us dictating what everybody gets, we're going to give you this amount, or we're going to let you pick these from these items, and you get to pick what you really want. And the other thing you can do is upsell on personalization. Upsell on name drops, upsell on monogramming, upsell on personalization, even with corporate items. And I think that that's also a great way to handle it, because you can do the production, you do the mass production, and then you do the individual production. And you do the shipping, and you can charge prices that are closer to retail prices if you are willing to do individual fulfillment. Something that I talked about, if you check out earlier episodes where I discuss company stores and e-commerce, can be an incredible way to provide value for your customer. So definitely something to think about, and love to talk about that stuff. And Gillen says, oh, I'll take one of those and put in a serial number for me. Yeah. I know you guys saw the Embroidered gift certificates. Those are model gift certificates. They don't exist right now, but it's something that I wanted to show as a potential. Guys, design some gift certificates that look nice and they're really fantastic. So I do like that stuff. And Carolyn says about the designs, thank you for making the designs a joy to work with. And I will say Carolyn is a very creative person. A lot of you guys are incredibly creative out there. Thank you for working with my designs and for showing me the stuff you make. I love looking at your embroidery. If you don't know that, I very much love looking at your samples, and somebody shows me samples. I love seeing stuff, especially when you're creating something new, you're making something wacky. I love seeing that stuff. Ron Goodwin Graphics says, we say cheerfully, for Christmas, no problem. It's over a year away. That may not be the redirect I was talking about, but you know what? I think it works. And let's see here. I did tell a guy I could make the Greek Orthodox Christmas date for him. Like I said, hey, whatever you have to say to spin it, guys. But I think maybe spinning it to make sure you get more production might be the way to handle it. And let's see. Mike says, a sublimated patch heat seal to a piece of cork makes a cool coaster. You know what? I have never done that. I will take that on faith, Mike. I know you've done a lot of cool stuff too. So yeah, think about that, coasters. And the other thing that I've had people do in my sphere before, there was a period of time where you could get tumblers that had clear inserts, and they were really made for putting photographs in, but they had enough space to put embroidery in them. And I had a ton of people who took these mugs with clear insert spaces and throw patches inside of them. It does mean you have to clean up the back. If you're making your own patches, make sure you're trimming and cleaning that back real nice, because if it's going inside of a clear coaster, you can definitely see that stuff. So that's one of those things. And Jeff says about his ornament, he did a lace ornament with the corporate logo. If you didn't hear that earlier, that one-time ornament helps them show you're creative, and they have more faith in you doing your logo work. Absolutely. If you guys have seen my other discussions about value, if you've seen me fight for what I call next level digitizing that has dimension in it, that has a little more creativity, maybe using creative threads or materials. When I fight for that stuff, everybody says, hey, what about just logo people? They want logos. Let me tell you, showing that work that has the creativity, it absolutely makes a difference to what people estimate your skill as, how they feel about your ability to handle work. And the funny thing is, you will show them something that is crazy. You will show them the big giant back piece. You will show them the incredibly detailed piece, the piece that has a ton of threads, the multimedia piece with printing, the reverse applique, the multiple laser kiss cut applique piece, whatever it is that has more involved in it. You'll show people that stuff and they go, wow, that is awesome. And they'll still order a polo shirt with a left chest. They'll still order a standard mid-profile hat with a logo dead center in the front. And the thing is, it is what Jeff says here. It increases trust, and it really does market. So part of what we're talking about here too can be marketing stuff. Ornaments are a great marketing insert. If you are sending out a big order right now, you should absolutely be handing them some little unexpected fun gift that was easy for you to produce. And the way that Jeff discussed it, where he's taking a lace ornament that has a nice, solid mesh fill behind it and throwing a logo on top of it, it doesn't really take much. You don't have to adjust that logo really to get that to work. And especially like those the felt ornaments that I showed you earlier from Caroline, that doesn't take a lot of adjustment on the file. You can throw that at the end of a run and have it run fine. You're running flats, you can throw a piece of felt on the last head at the end of a run and then stitch a border around it, and off you go with an ornament. And when that's in the top of their box and it's their logo, not yours, their logo, not yours, that's a present. It's a present for them. It's not a present talking about you. If you throw that in the top of that box, the amount of money that you spent, the amount of effort and value you spent versus what they think about your thoughtfulness, what they think about what you can do, and the possibility of them literally coming in and saying, wow, those are awesome. I want to give them to all of my customers. I want to give them to all of my crew. there is a lot of possibility in these little ornaments. There's a lot of possibility in these little gewgaws that you throw in. And I will say this, delight is a big deal with people. It really does drive them, how they feel about you. A small, unexpected thing like that is not, some people are going to take it for granted, sure. A lot of people aren't. And especially if it features their logo, it's about them, it is for them. That is a big deal. That's a gift. That's awesome. So think about that, folks. Creative stuff like that really does pan out, I think. And like I said, are you going to do every job like that? Absolutely not. You're not going to do little creative stuff or ornaments every job. You're not going to make lace every job. You're not going to do that for, Joe's plumber is not going to come in and want lace ornaments later on in the year. However, the ability to do that stuff and to save people really does make a big deal. And honestly, I think that's a big deal too. I think having a nice, unexpected thing. Plus, they pick that up, and if it's someone who's outside of our circle, who is not an embroiderer, not a decorator, they may never have seen the thing that you made before. And if you have a customer that's never done a patch before, one sublimated patch might be an incredible thing to them. If they've never had their logo on a patch, you might have just opened their mind to the entire possibility of patches. If they've never had a mug before and you sublimate a mug, you might have entirely opened them up to the idea of hard goods. Or if you have, let's say you have a service you're trying to provide that people haven't been picking up, this is a great time to throw out samples. Anyway, let's go on beyond that stuff, guys. I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple more comments before we get into the rest of what we're talking about today. That mostly was the kind of the prep stuff. We'll talk a little bit about some of the kind of decorations that are going on very shortly. I will discuss, like I said, a little bit about making faux knit patterns, stuff like that very shortly. Just going to show you a couple examples of stuff and discuss it briefly. I've actually discussed the digitizing method previously in a previous video, but we will discuss that a little bit. And then we'll kind of end this one a little early. I'm probably not going into deep bonus time today, especially as it is the holiday season, and especially because we have people who have stuff to get to. So Matt says, good news, UPS just delivered my materials. Good thing it's the weekend so I can get crafting. Absolutely. I will say the weekend doesn't always mean very much to us who are entrepreneurial in our spirit. So yeah, the weekend may not mean a lot, but it is something we at least have some time. Carolyn says about this year, mine are getting a pair of Hot Hands packets in their jacket pocket with my card. Up in the frozen north where you are, that is a heck of a present. I know, and I've done stuff like that where it's a little thoughtful thing means a lot. One of the things I remember distinctly is actually, you guys know that my mom worked and does work in decoration shops and was with me on this stuff. And something she always did is when she was handling large orders, she would put stuff into boxes as well that same way. And one that I remember is she had been talking to one of the purchasing people for a large chain of juice places here in the Southwest. And when that person came back after her pregnancy, she had a kiddo. Well, we bought onesies, added them onto an order in the colors of these very specialty colors that were made for all the uniforms for the people who are in the store. And we ran the same logo we used for left chests on the onesies, threw some cover on the back, some cloud cover, something like that to cover the back up so it's nice for kiddos, and threw those onesies with the logo in the box. And you would not believe the reaction we got. How much do we really spend on it? Couple of sample onesies, and on top of it, if you tell your vendors, especially if you're somebody who's been buying from a vendor a lot, you bigger commercial shops, you tell your vendor you're doing self-promotion or you're doing promotional stuff and ask them, can you throw a couple of these in? Frequently, you may get a specialty price if you're talking directly to your people. You may have some other options there. Or if you have marketing budget, sometimes they will let you do that. You say, yes, I'm sending this to a client because it's something that I would like them to maybe pick up, something like that. We've had a couple of vendors who are cool with us doing that. And we've actually just come out and said, hey, we're doing this to promote to a client that buys all these. Remember how I just bought all of these crazy colored garment dyed t-shirts that we sent? Well, that same client, I want to send a couple of pieces like this. Frequently you may get a consideration on that. Now that's not for everybody. It's not for every shop, every size. However, frequently, you throw in a very small thing, something that didn't cost you very much in blank form. And especially if you're running any kind of multi-head machine and you ever have extra space in the end of a run, great time to throw something on there that doesn't take a lot of tweaking in the design or the execution, and that can be pretty easily put together. But trust me, it makes a big impact, and especially with those frequent flyer customers who are always coming to you. Little thing like that, the little lace ornament we talked about, little felt ornament, may make a big difference, and they may very much have that feeling of friendship from you that is the different. They feel like you're a partner with them and you care about their business. So I think that that's a worthwhile thing. All right, for the last couple of things that kind of come out of that article, I actually briefly discussed things that happen in holiday specialties. I'm just going to bring these up because it's stuff that people keep asking me about. If you've been around me a lot, you've already heard a lot of the things that I've talked about before. So we're not going to belabor these points for a long time. I'm just going to discuss briefly some things. This is the season of textured substrates. I have now had a ton of people come to me and ask, how do I handle toweling and faux fur on the top of stockings and this knit hat, that knit hat, this cable knit, this textured object? And first thing I'm going to say to you guys is, for me, especially because we're talking about a time where we might not be getting a lot of support material in fast or shipping might be slow, I like to do things on the machine with thread. So I am going to recommend a knockdown stitch. If you're somebody who's in the brilliance world and you got enthusiasts, knockdown stitches are fantastic for taking down that texture and providing a base for stuff. And you know that I like my own personal version that I digitize called a light mesh fill. That may be something you see more of from me later when we talk about some other tools available for that. But creating a light mesh fill, which is kind of a bi-directional light fill, is something that I think really it's still very useful to people. I'm going to go ahead and throw this up. This is the first article that I have on it. It's bit.ly/EC texture, and it's taming textured substrates. If you've been around me for some time, you've already seen this article. It's been out for a long time. I've updated a couple of them with some new information, but really, this is where I talk about the different kind of textured substrates. If you got toweling, if you have high pile, if you have faux fur, if you have something with French terry with a lot of little bitty loops in it, that using this mesh fill, which is just literally light fill stitches, they go 45 and 135, 2 passes. They're very light. They make a little mesh that's like a chain link fence, like a little piece of mesh material that you're essentially making with your thread. And so any stitch that lays on top of those is laying on 2 or 4, 3, whatever. There's multiple little threads underneath it at any angle that it encounters that pick it up and it knocks down the material underneath it. So if you haven't seen that stuff before, you probably have seen it if you're from me. This article talks about underlays. It talks about essentially, this is the other one. Everybody loves this picture. I kind of don't know why. I didn't think it was that that interesting, but this is me discussing how underlay is like putting a boardwalk or putting a foundation on when you have a grassy plain with a boardwalk on it. And this is how we get the grass down. This is how we lift up our stitches. Our edge run are like little rails and our zigzags are like an underlayment. And essentially we're trying to knock down the material underneath and lift up the stitches on top. If you have trouble with taming texture, I would really recommend you go ahead and check that out. So, and if you want to just search for it, like I said, taming texture, how to machine embroider on towers, fleece, and fur. And that's on my site at erichcampbell.com. And like I said, knockdown is where I like to go with it. Can you use other materials if you don't digitize yourself or if you don't have software? Yes, you can. I've seen tons of people do something very similar using organza, something like that. You can use material to do it. People will also say, do you use water-soluble toppings when you do this? Personally, I do not. They can make a difference. They can help hold stuff down. The settings that I've seen for most knockdown and for my light mesh fill, which the settings are on this, and I actually have a second one I'll show you again, another article that shows a little bit more. The settings that are on this, I have not really needed to use water-soluble toppings to knock that texture down, and this has worked for me on everything from plush towels to faux fur to the other things like Sherpa or Minky or any of the fuzzy, loopy, thready, high pile materials. This has allowed me to essentially use designs that are not optimized for them, designs that are made for other flat materials right on top of them without a lot of changes. Every once in a while, I need to add a little more pull compensation, especially if something's really thick. But most of the time, I can drop a design. This is a stock design I created with absolutely no alteration to the stock design. And it was run on a very plush hotel-style towel with the light mesh fill underneath it. And as you can see, all of the straight stitch detail is sitting on top of that mesh with no problems. So if you're talking about texture, if you're having issues with that kind of gift material, you're doing robes, that's cool. Also, if you look at this one, I also have, I've got a little thing where I talk about embossing, because really the light mesh fill is very similar to what people use to do embossing or trapunto work. Very similar thing where you actually let the nab of the towel push through. And I have actually done this for corporate clients. Once again, people are like, oh, it's a little paw print. That's one of my stock designs again. Yeah, that's cute, but I've got corporate clients. If you have a corporate client that has a big logo that is identifiable from an outline, like say Apple for Mac computers, the Apple logo is very identifiable from the outline. If they have a nice big graphical element like that, or a big monogram, something like that, you can do something like this for a corporate client, and I think it looks really cool too. So it's just another option to deal with, ways you can handle the texture. But there's also a part 2 on this, which I'll go ahead and show you as well. So the first one, bit.ly/EC texture, will get you that one. The part 2 on this one is all about knit hats, because I essentially use a very similar technique. So once again, bit.ly/EC knit hats. If you're having trouble with knit hats, this goes over some of my technique for knit hats. And yes, I have run this method on cable knit sweaters, on cable knit hats. Also, I've run this on hand knits, the same as machine knits. So yes, this is for knit hats that are, regular acrylic beanie, toque, whatever you call them, out of the factory. Absolutely. I have also run just like this on big chunky knits that people knit themselves. So because essentially, if you use the light mesh, you are creating a fabric, you are creating a foundation on which you're embroidering. If you've got stabilizer in the back, and I'm not usually washing these away, I usually have a soft cutaway layer, something that is very soft, very light, but is still a cutaway, is a layer that's going to remain. If I got that layer and I've got this mesh on top, I'm making an entirely new fabric essentially there, and I'm making up for any gaps that are in there. Now, in this article, I do talk about some other things like stretch and how I handle stretch. The pre-measuring of ribs is one of the ways you can do it. You essentially, let's put it this way. I like to embroider a lot of these the way that they look on the head. I want them to stretch about as much on the head before I embroider them. You don't want to stretch them to the absolute max because they'll snap back and look bad. I also don't always love embroidering them flat. Some people embroider them flat, but then when you put them on, you'll see that you get all this warping here. Not always a big deal. Some people don't care, some people do. And depending on your logo, if you have a small bug logo, some small item that's in the middle of a small icon logo, probably fine to run them that way. And I'll admit that if you pre-stretch, they don't always look as good flat. And I'll say on a store shelf, they don't always look as good if you're doing them that way. Sometimes retail folks don't always love if you pre-stretch, because then you get a little bit more warping when they're laying flat as an object. When you're making them for a person and they are always going to be meant to be worn by that person, or they're going to be given directly to a person, not bought off of a shelf, I kind of like to do the pre-stretch. So I do explain how to do that if you choose to do pre-stretching, and how I measure that stuff to kind of make sure. What I essentially do is calibrate myself to how stretched it should look. I'm not measuring every hat to make sure the ribs are exactly so. What I'm doing is getting a feel for how the ribs should look when hooped. Because frequently with these, I'm hooping them flat in a flat hoop, just as you might any other flat garment, and turning the other half of these things out of the way. Frequently what I do. But, like I said, your mileage may vary, as I often say. It may be different to you, many ways to handle this, but the light mesh fill provides an excellent structure. And this article actually shows you a little more intently how to build the fill up, the light mesh fill, if you're doing it yourself, digitizing it. So it's something that you might want to take a look at, this particular one. Once again, I'll go ahead and bring that back up if I can get that for you. This is bit.ly/EC knit hats. Because I've had so many questions about it, I've covered it before. You'll see it in earlier items, but this is a great thing. If somebody looks back on this and says, I'm struggling at Christmas time, I'm struggling in the holidays, definitely this is something I want people to look at, because this is one of the garments I'm consistently seeing people complain about. And this same technique, these two fills with these same settings, will work wonders on knits, toweling, fleece, Sherpa, French terry. So all the robes, all the fuzzy jackets you might have, any of the knits you might have, this will work. Sometimes it's overkill, no lie, but it will save you for the add-on to that order where somebody is ordering a bunch of flat jackets and they let one person in the shop order a big Sherpa fuzzy thing. This will knock that Sherpa back and let you finish running. So, and by the way, before I go off this, I'll also say the way I intend to use these always is to use a thread that matches the background. Yes, you can do contrasting colors. It is visible, and sometimes there's some travel stitching or the edging. It does look debossed, but not using a color that's the same as the garment can mean that you see artifacts of the process that you may not love. So the way this is really intended is to use this in the color of the garment. And what I'm going to say is, if you're using it on any garment that is not shiny, it might be worthwhile to look at spun polyester, or let's say matte finish polyester and matte poly from Madeira, since they're really the ones who are making this particular kind of matte poly. Does a great job of sinking into the background and not looking shiny. Though what I am going to show you is these pieces that you've already seen. These are done with standard polyester thread, and you only see the thread. The reason they're taken at these extreme angles is because you can only really see that thread when the light shines off it just so. And so I actually, to show you the thread, I had to take these extreme angled shots to get the light to hit that thread just so that you could actually get a good look at it. It is not that visible, but some people may not like the shine of that background mesh, and then using a matte finish thread of some kind would be useful. And of course, the other option always is patches. You guys know I love patches and applique, and this is a lovely piece from RJ Silva of Eye Candy Designs. He does a lot of cool stuff for mini truckers. And this is his option of doing an applique style patch on that stuff, and I love that. And this one, by the way, is done applique style, where he has done it, applique patch style, which I like to call it, where you pre-do the design matter. In this case, all the lettering was done on this patch material ahead of time, then cut out. And the last step of just doing the stitch down and the full satin border was done directly on the hat. So on the inside, all you have is a border, and it doesn't smash down that knit very much. So other really great ideas for knit caps. So if you're having any problems with knit caps, one more time, I'll go ahead and show that on screen for you folks. bit.ly/ecknithats, and I will throw that in the description if you're on YouTube later on as well, so you guys can check that out. But like I said, these are things that people talk about quite a lot, so I thought I would go ahead and show them to you ahead of time. One of the other things really quickly to cover is specialty threads, and this one is actually, I don't think I managed to get this up into the notes ahead of time, so I'm not going to be able to show this on screen. I'm going to go ahead and copy this into the comments now. And this is something from MrXstitch.com. The other thing people are talking to me a lot about these days is metallic thread problems, right? Metallic thread problems. So we'll go ahead and show this real quick. MrXstitch.com/specialty thread tips with hyphens therein. You can copy that on the screen or grab that link. This is another thing I'm talking about very consistently. People are having issues with their metallic threads right now. Metallic threads are always a pain, I think. And here's the thing. There are new metallic threads that are better. I'm going to go ahead briefly and just give you this list of kind of things I look for when I'm dealing with metallics. As you can see, I've done tons of stuff with lots of metallics, really great threads. People use all kinds of different specialty threads, certainly, but the metallics, the good thing is that toward the end of this article, we've got some of the old school wrap metallics in the background. You can see they're super shiny, but hard to run. And these are lovely metallics from Iris Thread that I have up in here. But there's fantastic threads. Here's what I'm going to go ahead and show you is these are the steps that I kind of go through with people when they're dealing with metallic threads. First thing, watch for friction problems. If you're having thread breaks, make sure your thread path is clean, digitized with a light hand. Don't dump a bunch of density or very small stitches really close together. It's a good way to break thread. It is going to happen a lot of the time. So that's something that I worry about with folks. I don't like to see people running this stuff with really tiny, tiny stitches, because it's a good chance of cutting that previous thread or just binding up a lot of little tiny stitches together. It will break, it will snap, because especially old school wound kind of flat ribbon metallics, they really do have a tendency to snap easier than other threads. They're a little more friable. They break a little more easily. Use a large eye needle if you can, especially with those metallics that do have that thick wrap on them and tend to hang up. Definitely look at that thread path and watch that being clean and being tight. So fight your friction, make sure that's okay. I will also say some people lubricate their needle. Clear thread specific new lubricants, spray silicone spray sometimes does help and may help with fraying, but definitely you want to make sure that you're having these things pass correctly through your thread path. Next thing is to control tension. You're going to have a little rough texture, a little friction. This is just real. Most metallics do. Like I said, later on, we're going to talk a little bit about the new kind of metallics. So I'll say the Madeira CR, and there's some other metallics that have coatings on them and that are made a little differently. They are not quite as shiny, but they're still very shiny. And those run very much more like normal threads. So later on, the last step is play favorites. Look for threads that don't cause this trouble. But most classic metallics have some texture to them. Loosening up your upper tension can sometimes help with that. And sometimes they will coil and stretch and wind on themselves. So balancing the tension is important. And sometimes people are doing all kinds of other stuff later on, like I said, to avoid kinks. We'll go down to the next step. Yeah, the joke in here is I said, not personal kinks, that's your business. But metallic thread tends to kink, and it does. It tends to kink and twist on itself. The foils tend to make little kinks and corners. If you look at metallic thread, the old school wrap thread, in your embroidery, you'll see satin stitches. If you look at it with a magnifying glass, you'll see the little corners, because it actually, like, it gets to the point where a thread usually makes a nice little rounded hump, and it'll have corners and bends and breaks in it, because it does have a tendency to have those corners and kinks. And if it twists back in on itself, a lot of people use different thread stands, external thread stands. They will do things like have a small weight on them. It does affect tension, so you got to watch that. People will hang a large paper clip in the middle of the thread path, something that allows it to keep some tension in between the passes. It doesn't always happen on machines that have nice thread tubes that are going up there, but sometimes you'll have issues with it winding and moving that around like that and wrapping on itself. If you have that in your thread path, also look how it's coming off of the cone and see if there's any issues there. But people have a host of solutions from it. Personally, when I've had absolutely horrible problems with it, I've used external thread trees and lengthened the amount of space between, and with a little bit of weight on it, sometimes you will have it untwist itself. And I will be absolutely honest, I've had some cones of thread that are just the worst. The smaller the cone, if I've had to do specialty threads or sampling where I get in small fashion samples, those little pinky size cones that are the pinky size kind of little spools that you'll see in stores, sometimes those are the worst because they're pre-wound very tightly. And you should really look, some people also use thread stands that allow that to come off horizontally off of that. And it looks like we got a tip in here from Michael Downey. He says, a plastic drinking straw over the spool pin does the trick for me. No changes to anything else. Yeah, it really depends on what kind of thread you have and how it's coiling up on you. Like I said, if you have it where it's in the middle of the span and it has things like it's twisting in on itself in the middle of the span, that's where people hang weights on them. People run them through packing peanuts just so there's a very small hole it goes through, but that's going to increase your tension. So do be careful with that stuff. Frank, also another thing people tell me all the time, thread nets. Absolutely thread nets. And like I said, I've also done things where I just lengthen the thread path and give it more room for the weight of the span to do the job for you. The thing is, with me, I found that not all brands do it, not all cones do it, and that for me, the larger cones are going to work better. And yes, I know they're more expensive, but if it's something that you're using all the time, when I tell you later to find your favorite brand, to not only find your favorite brand, but if you have colors you're using frequently, the larger cone of these things is going to probably act better for you. So do that. Next thing, slow your stitch. Don't run at top speed just because you can. And honestly, that's for embroidery in general. Don't run at top speed just because you can. It will affect your quality because you get increased pull distortion when you run at top speed. Some machines are going to run better than others. Some jobs, some materials are going to run better than others. But I find that with you get more tension on more speed. You're building up that friction quicker. And I've actually had threads that were really sensitive to friction and temperature, and it got to the point where it seemed to me I was getting these really clean cuts on my thread, and it was like I was heating up the needle through coarse materials to a degree that it was like melting my thread. Now that is something that is anecdotal. I don't know that's exactly what was happening, but I was having these really clean breaks all the time with no fraying whatsoever, and I found that slowing down and lubricating kept me from having those problems. So once again, more in general though, more speeds, more material stress, back down your speed a little bit if you're having troubles. And last one, like I said, play favorites. Go out there and test stuff. I know everybody's got a favorite brand. If you're going to throw them in the comments, go ahead. A lot of people love the new Madeira CR. I've known people who really love Iris from Enmart. Depends on what people love. And that's Carolyn right there. She likes Iris Metallic, run at 900 and use the straw. So, hey, the straw, 2 votes for the straw, folks. You might want to think about that. That's not something I've done, but it might be your thing. What I will say is I have had good luck with the Madeira threads, and the CR has run very well for me. But I've also run just about everything. As you see, all these pieces up above you here. This piece, and if you've ever seen my really large falcon piece, that this was part of the big giant back where it's a big falcon with paisleys in it and the entire thing. I talked about motifs earlier, and you'll see that design in the motif video. That piece was done all in the Iris Metallics, but I will say that some of the colors on that were more difficult than others. Also, I had some stitches where small stitches were a problem on that one. But the thing is, people have favorite brands, and what I'll say is, play favorites. Try a few different metallics out when you do have downtime. Let's say in January that you have downtime. You didn't get enough stuff shifted off you with gift certificates, right? If you have some downtime, grab a couple cones of metallic, talk to your suppliers for metallics, and try a few standard metallics and see what runs best for you, because the best option ever is if you find a metallic that runs without doing a lot of changes. All this stuff that people do to manage their production, best thing ever would be if you don't have to do it. And I know I have to ask people. I know like Lisa's got a favorite one. I know that, like I said, Carolyn said Iris. I have learned the Madeira, the FS, and the CR, and I've had good luck with those. And there's some that I have, and I'll tell you the truth. I had one that somebody gave me, was swearing up and down they loved it. An old cone they handed to me, said, run this, you'll love it. And it was like Monrex, I believe. And it was quite an old cone and it ran pretty good, but I never had the luck they did. They ran it, it was fine. I swear that there are some times where it feels like the gremlins we talked about earlier are in your machine waiting to break thread. I'm not saying that different threads or different machines love different threads, but the way people run, the way people digitize, if you have a thread that just meshes with you, that runs great, and your customers like the look, go for it. And here's Jeff comes in with, he says Madeira CR and Kingstar. And I actually heard Kingstar many times, but I haven't run that myself. Like I said, big Madeira guy because I kind of grew up on it. I grew up on Madeira and Isocord and good old sulky kind of threads. But those are the kind of things. And I'll say also, next time you come back around to Halloween, the other one that kills me is this, working with glow-in-the-dark threads, special effects threads. The old school glow-in-the-dark threads were like fishing line. They broke all the time. Lately, I've used some of the they look much more like thread now. They're actually spun threads. They're not a monofilament like the Luna from Madeira, and I know there's others. Those are much nicer than it used to be. So if you're somebody from the good old days who ran some of this stuff early on in your commercial machines and thought never again, the threads that are out there now are worth taking a look about. So there's that stuff. I thought I would show you that stuff, guys. So we've had a little run through all the knits and all the great stuff. And here's some of the last stuff we're going to talk about. I will show you a little bit about this. We talked about faux knit work. It's ugly sweater time. I actually made a banner for that, if I remember right. Ugly sweater time, everybody. So let's talk about that stuff real briefly. This will be our last little bonus thing. And I guess we're going into bonus time. I'll try and make it quick, though. There's a couple different things. This is the embroidered version of the sweater material. And yes, that is embroidery. And yes, it looks pretty much like knit. And I'm trying to get close to it so you see more of it. And this is actually an article, and I'll go ahead and throw this up for you guys. This is something I've already talked about. I've talked about on this channel before, and this is really this is something that's not for everybody and not for everything. When you're talking about reproducing handwork, one of the things I like to do is reproduce knit panels, and this is one of the samples that I show people. I've got some other pieces I've done that are probably not for everybody to check out because not all this work was easy and not all this work turned out great. This is all done manually, but I know people love the ugly sweater thing, and actually I was an early adopter of the printed ugly sweater. If you didn't see the banner earlier, let's go ahead and pull this down. I'm going to show you guys again what I put up for the episode today. If you see that background there, that is the custom piece that I was talking about before. You'll see my little emoji icon at the top. You'll see it says the Takeup, and we've got some trees in there. Well, I'm actually going to show you more about that stuff real quickly. And the cool thing is I actually have files for you guys. I have a SVG file for you to play with that has a background, and I actually have, if you really wanted it, you'll actually get the Takeup version that I put up, but in blues, because I had a couple different versions. I have the blue one that I really liked, and then I did it in the greens because that was that's really my classic logo type color, though I do love the blue one. And as you know, if you looked at the article too, the first article I showed you guys, you'll see one that I did for Black Duck in that same, essentially in that same template. And though this thing looks like it's difficult to do, it's really not that hard. This is kind of like pixel art. And if you've ever done any sort of counted work, if you've ever done any cross stitch, it's as easy as messing with that stuff. And you can really just get into it, especially because I'm going to provide you guys with the file that is just a big panel of these shapes. So all I'm going to show you is very briefly what this is. And these prints have gone everywhere. People love these things. They've been using them for, and I've used them for marketing mostly. So I'll just put these things up. As you can see from this SVG, if we can get a preview of it, it just says Happy Holidays from, it's got a bar, it's got these banners here. And the thing is, there's essentially two pieces to this. You want a darker color background generally than the stitches, the knit stitches that are on top. And then you have these little vector stitch shapes. I'm actually going to bring this thing up, and I'll bring it up in Affinity if I can get this to work for you guys. And it looks like I'm going to get it to work. Let me go ahead and go full screen on that so I can show you what we're doing. Essentially, this is all it really is. I'm going to zoom in here and show you what's going on. In essence, all we have are these little shapes. If you want to think about what knits look like, the face of the knit that's showing to you looks like these little V shapes, and it's just kind of an artifact of the way knit is constructed. The thing is, we just have to fool the eye enough. We don't have to do anything crazy, and all these are these little bitty heart shapes, and really all these are two little overlapped ovals. And as you can see, I've already created this big page full of them. And the other thing that you're going to find out is behind these are individual stripes. Each stripe actually has a stripe of background color that's involved, right? Now I'll show you how this one is constructed a little bit. But really, it's a super easy process. All you really have involved is a background color that's slightly darker than your knits, but it's in the same color family. So here we are. This is great for digital printing. And then you have your essentially, and this one all has the same color. This one's all using just a dark blue under everything. So it's super, super easy. I've done other pieces like the black duck one I showed you before actually has multiple colors in the background. But really all you do is select each one of these suckers that you want to change. You grab one, you change your color, and that's it. So yes, there's some point and click. Yes, it takes some time, but drawing on this thing is just like drawing little pixel art. It's just like doing little emojis. It's not that hard to do. It takes a little bit of time, but you can also do things like make these two rows, copy them, paste them, and align them with the grid. What you're going to see is that after I did my initial piece, and you can actually see the artifact here. It doesn't show up in the actual printing, but you can kind of see it in the preview here where this looks a little more blue than the other ones. Well, the reason is I drew this little piece of the emoji myself, and then I grabbed all the other parts that were involved in it, and I actually had these in a big group and pasted them on top. So the thing is, if you actually went and tried to grab one of these, there's a second one underneath it because there's the entire set of the blank ones behind it. Because the truth of the matter is when we're doing it for print, especially digital print or sublimation, it doesn't care that there's two copies of that. It's not like embroidery. You don't have to worry about it that much. And as long as it's aligned with the grid, everything works out. So the cool thing is, like I said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and give you a file to play with this. If nothing else, if you're not doing print, what I think is valuable about this is you can use these to make really cool social media posts. And yes, it's been done to death, but people still stop and take a look at it, and it is cute. By the way, if you want to know the other way I handled the drawing on this, great thing to do, drop your image in, and I'll actually show you this. You drop your image in that you want to have on this actual piece, and you set it to really like a low transparency or high transparency, not much of the thing showing. And you go ahead and lock that layer as I've done here. And you can do this in any software. I'm giving you an SVG, so you should be able to put it in any vector software. And then you just draw around the edges and you draw the little shapes. As long as you've got this layer locked and you're working on your other layer in here, you should be able to then draw around it and draw little shapes. Now, it is trial and error. I did definitely draw the left side. By the way, I started in the center. You see you've got a center line that I marked for myself. Started in the center and drew around the edge and then copied the edge to the other side. Like I said, if you've ever planned for cross-stitch in your life, then you know what I'm talking about here. It is not all that controversial or difficult, but it is something that takes a little bit of time to get done. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a file for this. If you've ever wondered how these things are put together, yes, there are people who are doing more for it. They're printing with puff inks and screen printing. They're doing more to make them more interesting, but I think they're still interesting and fun, and there's still time right now if you want to do that. Even if you just want to put a happy holidays message out for people who are around you, I think that's a great plan. Plus, the other thing I thought was interesting, even though I did this originally and then I decided to go with the knit pattern, one of the other cool things you can do is instead of locking this up and having that extreme opacity, I also love the idea of having a piece of embroidery, because this is a PNG file, there's a transparent PNG I kicked out of Embrilliance, and putting that on top of the faux sweater so we can not only have the sweater pattern, the ugly sweater background, but still do our embroidery as what we're selling and mock it up that way so it looks like we're on top of a little knit. Now, because I have a really flat version of the knit background that I did, I decided to not go with the embroidered preview on top of it, but you totally could drop an embroidered preview in this band, just do the happy holidays stuff. Maybe you take some time to drop your own name in the name banner that I have further down here, leave the trees on there, leave the other knit patterns in there. In any case, it's something that I thought you might have fun with, and it is as simple as selecting and coloring. That's all there is to it. As you can see in this one, all of the decorations are white. Other ones that I've done previously, I've also had multiple colors, but I wanted it to look very simple like an actual knit piece. Rather than having everything in the world there. I actually wanted to have, just have that particular piece there. And like I said, I've done some other stuff with it. As you see here, but even in this case, it's like Intarsia, it only has the white as the secondary color here. I think it makes it easy, but it still has a really good look to it. So in any case, let's go ahead and get you guys a link to that file for sure. And I think that it's really kind of a cool way to handle it. It's an easy thing to do. So let's go ahead and grab you this. We're probably going to have other files that I give you at some point. And when you do, this link should be for that folder. But this is bit.ly/takeup files. And that's something that I'd like you to go ahead and check out. It's just a Google Doc. So I'm going to copy this out for you guys, and I'm going to throw this in the comments as well. But yeah, bit.ly/takeup files will absolutely get you the vector for that. And I have the Takeup version, which I know some people asked me about earlier. I wasn't intending to do that, but everybody was saying, oh, I want the Takeup version. I want to actually have that for myself. And if you want my goofy little head on your desktop for some reason, you're welcome to it. I don't know why you would, but if you want the Takeup version, it's in there as well. And if nothing else, it does provide you with an idea. And like I said, you can go look up actual standard knit patterns, stuff like that, cross stitch patterns to get some ideas about it, and that's what you do. So pretty easy stuff there, guys. Bit.ly/Takeup files will get you to it, and you don't have to do all of that plotting yourself. Could you make those yourself? Absolutely. All it is a regular grid of little heart shapes in a lighter color over the background color that's a little bit darker in the same family with the white decoration. That's all I did. So it's something that people asked me about previously, and I decided I would share that with you guys today. So there's that one. And then the last thing is I'm just going to briefly show you this very, very briefly. It's already been covered in an article. All I'm going to say is the same way we did with this print, when you're trying to replicate handwork like this, like the faux knit, all you're trying to do is take whatever is on the face that we see and get as close to it as you can with thread. The cool thing is with knits, like I showed you before, what we have are these nested little V shapes, and you can definitely see that in this particular tree image. These nested little V shapes go together. This is all done in Burmalonico, and I'll be honest, I had some bobbin and tension issues on this, so I've got a couple little pieces of bobbin thread that came up. So this particular sample I went back and redid, but this is just Burmalonico, and what you're looking at here is, I believe, a triple run, and I'm actually going to bring this up on screen and show it to you real quickly. Same kind of thing, though. What are we trying to do whenever we emulate a hand stitch, something like that? And like I said, I'm being real with you. You're seeing all the ugly details. This one's got a couple of snags and bobbin problems, but I actually ran this with fully thick Burmalonico 12-weight thread on a little bitty home machine because I was at home sampling. I didn't have time to go to the nice big machines where I could adjust everything nicely. This was run on like a Brother PE 800, bottom of the road, you know, $500 machine, little tiny machine. And this was actually done, like I said, at home. You can see from that rectangular hoop, that's what I'm talking about. So even with the tensions and the issues that can bring up, I managed to get it to look like this. And I think it looks pretty good. But as you can see, all we're doing once again is producing those little V's on the face. If you can get these little tucked in V's, it's all it is. And it's essentially like a motif, but I did do this manually, one stitch at a time for this small piece so that I could path it the way I wanted to. If you don't care about trimming and you can hide your tie-offs well enough, I don't think you might have too much trouble with it, but this one is all each a continuous filament of thread for each of the colors. And I did a fairly standard, I did this really loose kind of jagged stitch on the outside, a satin stitch that had jagged edges on purpose to make it continue to look rough. But I did that so it looked like I had stitched a little piece of knit material to a shirt. And so I'll go ahead and give you another look at this really quickly. We're going to bring this up in Brilliance. I've got this here in Stitch Artist, and I'm just going to show it to you. I'm going to run you through the way this thing runs on the simulation. So colors are not that important to it, but I am just going to kind of show you what's going on. You'll be able to see briefly as it gets into frame here that we're essentially just passing over each one 3 times. You can see as I click through 1, 2, 3, that's one part of that V, 1, 2, 3, and then I continue on. And for most of the time, that is exactly all it is. So this is just triple passes of these tucked in V's. In this particular piece, the measurements, really, it depends on the thread you're using, depends on the number of passes you're using, how thick you get. Because what you're trying to do is have, just like that printed version, a little bit of space so that you see some of the background material through, because that gap, the gap that's in there, the space that's in there is what makes it look like knit. The slight amount of sparseness that's in there is part of the character of the knit. The holes, the gap is part of the character of the knit. So what you're looking to do is emulate that look by having a little space in there. But the thing is, because these stitches repeat on top of each other 3 times exactly, what you're also seeing is that they build up, the ends look narrower and the center looks fatter, very much like those little printed ovals that overlap to make the heart shapes. And the thing is, you can't see that, of course. On preview software, you're not going to see it. It looks like individual stitches, looks very open, very loose, but you know that it's going to build up like that when you finish. And as you can see, I've also traveled under that edge that I stitched later. So I cheated my way up to that so I could get my pattern to be just the way I wanted it. Traveled up under the edge. Also allowed me to stop here and copy this section and paste it back in. So I cheated. I went ahead and ran up the center just so I didn't have to digitize that backward and figure out how it was going to path. So sometimes you cheat. When you're doing sampling, sometimes you cheat. But here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and run it one more time up through here, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then there's a small jag in to connect. And I'm going to tell you truthfully, these are very fuzzy. The other thing you'll see that I did, you'll see that it stops. If you check out that icon, I'll go ahead and put this up to full screen for you real quick. If you check out the icon there, you'll see that it actually stops and drops 1 stitch inside the travel. And I'll back us back down to that so you can see it. So here we are in the beginning of that travel. We're going to go ahead and click through. If I can get myself to quit double clicking on the wrong screen, folks. Let's go back through the running. So we're running through this thing. As we get here, you're going to see that little travel that I had to do because we're jumping up vertically. We're not connecting directly to the end of another stitch. I'm going to go ahead and jump through here, and you're going to see as we get there, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. When we jump over, we actually sink one stitch in between. That little stitch in between is going to help to sink that connector and have it disappear a little bit. So that's why we drop that little stitch in between. And then we start back in 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we jump back up 3, 4 because I'm traveling up to the top. And what I'm going to tell you once again, because this is so thick, because it's supposed to look like hand knit, you can get away with a little cheating. Doesn't bother you so much. Basic stitches to do a 3 count. The truth of the matter is sometimes they're a 4 count, and I alternate them from side to side so that it wasn't too garish. And once again, drop that little connector stitch and back we go. So the truth of the matter is every time somebody tells you, yes, it's a motif, it looks exactly like this. When you're doing this stuff manually and when you're trying to make it work for pathing, there's a high chance you're going to do some shady stuff. You're going to just hide some things. The thing is, when we're talking about knits, when we're talking about handwork, the idea of the imperfection is part of the desired result. So it's okay to do some stuff like that. Plus, you're going to see some other tricks I played. Over here, you can see in this section, that there's actually a travel stitch that I ran under a future stitch. Because I know what all these things are planned ahead of time, I went ahead and made this design out of vector shapes like you saw there, just like that knit pattern I just showed you. I used that to plot my design ahead of time. Because I have my design plotted ahead of time, I can travel under an area where there's going to eventually be a nice big thick stitch in the next color, and that means that I've covered that up pretty well. And as you can see, we travel through, and every once in a while we have a little bit less coverage or a little bit more coverage. But because we're doing this, and it's supposed to look like handwork, big fuzzy thread. This was particularly Burmalonico. You could totally use Burmalana. You could use one of the acrylic threads that's made to do the same thing. You can see that what I'm really essentially doing is large bean stitches in a V format that are tucked in tight so that I get a little bit of coverage in there, but I still have this gap here so that it looks like I have holes in the overall presentation. So yes, I know that was fast, but that was the fun stuff. I thought if I'm going to give you all this business stuff, I'm going to give you all this stuff to work with, then I'll give you a little visual treat at the end and you can have some fun stuff to play with. Go out there and grab those files if you're into doing the knit. So I do not have the embroidered files on there because honestly, those were all done manually. Yes, you'll get some settings. I think later on I'm going to do another run through doing handwork like this and see if I can do a more detailed training. There is more about that, as I said, in a previous video, if you want to check that out. But I do indeed have in there, you will have all the files for the other one that I showed you, this piece. You won't have the Takeup version, but you will have the blank version of all that vector, and you'll have that in SVG format, so you should bring it into anywhere, ungroup that sucker, and be able to run out and do whatever you want with it. And at the very least, it will show you how that is put together. Very simple thing that I've done for many years and can make what I think is a fairly striking texture for everybody to work with. So with that, we'll go ahead and stop all of this stuff. Let's go ahead and finish up, guys. Suffice it to say, I think that it's something interesting to work with. Also, Justin says, here's something fun. He says, you can also use masking to use your sweater pattern to fill lined art. Yeah, totally. If you make that sweater pattern into something to mask, you can throw it into a power clip if you're in CorelDRAW. Whichever tool you use, it does work as a fill pattern. You can play with that. You have my blessing to use those little V's as anything you want. If you make something cool, if you make your own version, I would love for you to tag me in social media if you post it, because I'd like to see the fun stuff you make. And hey, I get you. Cindy says, bah humbug, is Christmas over yet? Yeah, not everybody's big Christmas people. I know sometimes the art gets a little tired sometimes. I will say that knit look is cool for a lot of different reasons. If you're someone like Carolyn and me who likes Scandinavian stuff, that knit look is certainly something you can use for other things. Plus, it's the same kind of thing you would do to make yourself like artificial cross-stitch patterns, stuff like that, if you're printing stuff up. And what I'm going to say is, though I don't always love this stuff, I will say that a lot of my customers have loved that stuff. I've made some customer pieces out of that and definitely made some cool marketing pieces that are just a little fun, little thing you can do differently. Now, certainly, it's been around for quite some time. People have entire packages. I know, I believe Tom Rowan has one. He's got a package that he sells where he has a whole ugly sweater sales package that he does earlier on in the year for printers. Something cool to do, but if you haven't seen it before, I thought it might be fun and you could get yourself a free tester and try and play with that stuff. So in any case, guys, I hope you had a good time. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope, if nothing else, you got some company out of me coming into your shops and into your homes and into your ears and your headphones today to talk about embroidery stuff and to talk about surviving the season. So one last recap. If you haven't done it before, today is the day. I'm reminding you now, state your cutoff date and let people know when you cannot take any more work, whether for fun or profit. Be ready to redirect people so they have an option. If you're trying to save those last minute present buyers, have some options that will work for you that you can fit in your schedule, and present an option instead of a no. Good items for that, stuff that is non-sized so you don't have to worry about who it's going for. Stuff that's easy to decorate for yourself so you can get it into your production schedule. Things that are in stock or made in-house, that dead stock you have, it's a good time to get rid of it for people who are desperate for items and can't wait for shipping. And another great idea is to defer production with things like gift certificates and future plans. If you can produce the gift certificate that allows the people in the company in question to present something without having to do that extra work, you take that work off their hands, they're going to bring you work later, and you can go ahead and set production dates. If you have texture substrates, go to this website. This is how I teach people how to do it, bit.ly/ectexture. Look into knockdown stitches. If you're an Embroidered customer, the technical knockdown is there in Enthusiast in a single click, which is awesome. And if you want to use my light mesh fill, you can do it here, and you might be hearing more about that later. Other ways you can use that. If you have trouble with knit hats, go to bit.ly/ecknithat. Same thing, light mesh fill will save your life. Managing metallic threads, watch for friction, use a good metallic that you know runs well, keep your thread paths clean, and slow the machine down when you're breaking too much. It's always a good idea. And go ahead and go to the files site and grab some stuff for ugly sweater time. All right, folks, with that, that is the end of this week's Take Up. We are deeply into bonus time, and I am super happy to have had you all here. I can't wait to see you all again next week, and I'm going to leave you again with our moment of meme.